I am a woman of distinction, recklessly beautiful and untamed. My heart is splayed wide open, for I not only trust the process, but I trust the force in which each one of my feet hits the ground, and my ability to maneuver through the joys and grief I face each day. I walk tall, taller than an old cypress tree, because I am at home in my skin. My self-worth lives in each nook and cranny of my spine. I know there is space for me in this world, however I may come. My success is in presence. I am present in the humans I stumble upon like heartbeats at first light. I salsa dance bare-bummed with bronze skin and white cheeks, let the music sway and bend and dip my spirit with the grace of a dozen fireflies drunk on the moon's wine. I am dripping in salt, browned from the sunshine, and barefoot in my beauty. I am not afraid to tell you that I am beautiful, because I have done the work to be at home in my soul's skin. I am worthy, darling, oh so deliciously worthy. I do not shrink to accommodate the insecurities of those around me, but stand tall to remind them gently, why crouch? I know better than to try and fix or heal the suffering of this world. I know that by healing my suffering, I heal this world. I am a woman of distinction, and I am not afraid to love you before you are ready. I open fearlessly and sweetly and ferociously with all the might I can, for what good is living if we are not loving? I am here to love, and love I will. I do not search for my power in this world. I rest into the empowerment I already am. I am a woman of distinction, and I am not a victim of circumstance. I feel when things are out of alignment, and I move from them with as much grace as I enter. I understand that no is self-love, and everything after no is unworthiness. I am a woman of distinction. I do not keep my freedom in a cage that requires 6 whiskeys to be let loose. I drink the ocean for breakfast and kiss the red dirt for dessert. I dance and shimmy and shake and love through my life. I ground through movement, through dance, through the sea. I am a woman of distinction. You will feel me when I walk into the room.
Hello, welcome to Dottie's World. It's story time again, and it's a little bit of a bittersweet one because we are finishing our book tonight. So we're on the silver chair in the Chronicles of Narnia series, and tonight's stream is the last 2 chapters in this book. So bittersweet because well, this has been a really great book. I forgot how good the silver chair is. It's been so enjoyable, and so I've really just had a good time reading this one. But you know, the bitter part, because it's coming to an end, and it's just, you know, it's always a little sad when a good book ends, but that means we only are going to have 1 book left in this series. So I've almost read an entire series on my YouTube. So kind of cool, but yeah, definitely a little bit bittersweet because it's just been so enjoyable reading these books to you all. And So yeah, we have 2 chapters left in this one, and then the last book is called The Last Battle, and then I'll be reading the Lord of the Rings series. So very excited for those. But yeah, crazy that yet another book is coming to an end. I have really enjoyed The Silver Chair. It's just been a wonderful story. I'm just very pleased with it. And so it's been many, many years since I read this series, probably since I was a, a child, maybe a teenager. I think, yeah, I'm not sure when the last time was, but there's a lot that I forgot about them. But this book has been awesome. So it's coming to an end. So I'll go ahead and give some shout outs and we can get going on this. So hello to Sue Finelli and Sofa Queen, Jess Palmer, Trevor Mishler. I'm here, of course, because it's my channel. Be weird if I wasn't here. Jenny T.I. Murphy. Kirk, of course. Wanderer of the Zone. And Kirk, I'm so glad that you got your painting, that you liked it. I did a really, really awesome one tonight. I did another fairy painting, and it will be available in my auction next month, but it's very glittery, and it's a really good one. I was very, very pleased with how that one came out. I had a lot of fun painting it, very enjoyable. And yeah, it was just a really good day. I worked this morning. I got a lot of stuff done that I needed to. Got over 15,000 steps in at work, and then I went to the gym and I did the row machine for the first time. Melanie Moran, hello. Um, yeah, so I did the row machine for the first time and really enjoyed that. That was very fun. And then I did a leg day. So, it's a good workout when you're leaving the gym and you are having trouble walking because your legs are burning so good. So that was a great workout. It was a great day. And then I had time to paint before my stream, and my painting came out amazing. So I'm so excited to share it with you guys next month for my auction. It will be available for you to buy. So yeah, I'm very excited for it. I spray textured and laid tile all day. I do not know anything about doing that. So good for you, Jess. I'm drinking some good old kombucha. This lemon berry is so good. So good. This brand, Synergy. Can you see it? It's kind of kind of bright. Whatever. The Synergy brand. Anyway, it's excellent kombucha. Lemon berry, pineapple. Those two are like the top best. Absolutely top best. Give me just 1 second. 1 second, y'all. Okay. There we go. Okay, excellent. Excellente. Okay, so we're finishing the Silver Chair, the Chronicles of Narnia series. We have 2 chapters left. And so the last chapters that we read, they were leaving the underworld city, and then they were trying to find a way out, and Jill, she reached up ahead of her, or like above her, into a hole, and then she disappeared. So That's where we are now. Ordered some shilajit on Amazon and it arrived today. I'm looking forward to trying that. I probably pronounced that wrong, but I don't know what that is, Jenny. So yeah. Um, okay, let's do this. Chapter 15, The Disappearance of Jill. The patch of light did not show up anything down in the darkness where they were standing. The others could only hear, not see, Jill's efforts to get onto the Marshwiggle's back. That is, they heard him saying, "You needn't put your finger in my eye, and nor your foot in my mouth either. And that's more like it. And now I'll hold on to your legs. That'll leave your arms free to steady yourself against the earth." Then they looked up, and soon they saw the black shape of Jill's head against a patch of light. "Well," they all shouted up anxiously. "It's a hole," called Jill's voice. "I could get through it if I was a bit higher." "What do you see through it?" asked Eustace. "Nothing much yet," said Jill. "I say, Puddleglum, let go of my legs so that I can stand on your shoulders instead of sitting on them. I can steady myself all right against the edge." They could hear her moving, and then much more of her came into sight against the grayness of the opening. In fact, all of her down to the waist. "I say," began Jill, but suddenly broke off with a cry. Not a sharp cry. It sounded more as if her mouth had been muffled up or had something pushed into it. After that, she found her voice and seemed to be shouting out as loud as she could, but they couldn't hear the words. Two things then happened at the same moment. The patch of light was completely blocked up for a second or so, and they heard both a scuffling, struggling sound and the voice of the Marshwiggle gasping, "Quick, help! Hold onto her legs! Someone's pulling her! There! No, here! Too late!" The opening and the cold light which filled it were now perfectly clear again. Jill had vanished. "Jill! Jill!" they shouted frantically, but there was no answer. "Why the dickens couldn't you have held her feet?" asked Eustace. "I don't know, Scrub," groaned Puddleglum. "Born to be a misfit, I shouldn't wonder. Fated to be Pole's death, just as I was fated to eat talking stag at Harfang. Not that it isn't my own fault as well, of course." "This is the greatest shame and sorrow that could have fallen on us," said the prince. "We have sent a brave lady into the hands of enemies and stayed behind in safety." "Don't paint it too black, sir," said Puddleglum. "We're not very safe except for death by starvation in this hole." "I wonder, am I small enough to get through where Jill did?" said Eustace. What had really happened to Jill was this. As soon as she got her head out of the hole, she found that she was looking down as if from an upstairs window, not up as if through a trap door. She had been so long in the dark that her eyes couldn't at first take in what they were seeing, except that she was not looking at the daylit, sunny world which she so wanted to see. The air seemed to be deadly cold, and the light was pale and blue. There was also a good deal of noise going on and a lot of white objects flying about in the air. It was at that moment that she had shouted down to Puddleglum to let her stand on his shoulders. When she had done this, she could see and hear a good deal better. The noises she had been hearing turned out to be two kinds: the rhythmical thump of several feet, and the music of four fiddles, three flutes, and a drum. She also got her own position clear. She was looking out of a hole in a steep bank which sloped down and reached the level about 14 feet below her. Everything was very white. A lot of people were moving about. Then she gasped. The people were trim little fauns and dryads with leaf-crowned hair floating behind them. For a second they looked as if they were moving anyhow. Then she saw that they were really doing a dance. A dance with so many complicated steps and figures that it took you some time to understand it. Then it came over her like a thunderclap that the pale blue light was moonlight and the white stuff on the ground was really snow. And of course, there were the stars staring in a black frosty sky overhead, and the tall black things behind the dancers were trees. They had not only got out into the upper world at last, but had come out in the heart of Narnia. Jill felt she could have fainted with delight, and the music, the wild music, intensely sweet and yet just the least bit eerie too, and full of good magic, as the witch's thrumming had been full of bad magic, made her feel it all the more. All this takes a long time to tell, but of course it took only a very short time to see. Jill turned almost at once to shout down to the others, I say it's all right. We're out and we're home. But the reason she never got further than I say was this. Circling round and round the dancers was a ring of dwarfs, all dressed in their finest clothes, mostly scarlet with full fur-lined hoods and golden tassels and big furry top boots. As they circled round, they were all diligently throwing snowballs. Those were the white things that Jill had seen flying through the air. They weren't throwing them at the dancers, as silly boys might have been doing in England. They were throwing them through the dance in such perfect time with the music and with such perfect aim that if all the dancers were in exactly the right places at exactly the right moments, no one would be hit. This is called the Great Snow Dance and is done every year in Narnia on the first moonlit night where there is snow on the ground. Of course, it is a kind of game as well as a dance, because every now and then some dancer will be the least little bit wrong and get a snowball in the face, and then everyone laughs. But a good team of dancers, dwarfs, and musicians will keep it up for hours without a single hit. On fine nights when the cold and the drum taps and the hooting of the owls and the moonlight have got into their wild woodland blood and made it even wilder, they will dance till daybreak. I wish you could see it for yourselves. Sandman, what's going on? What other stream is going on that you are hopping between? What had stopped Jill when she got as far as the say of I say was, of course, simply a fine big snowball that came sailing through the dance from a dwarf on the far side and got her fair and square in the mouth. She didn't in the least mind. 20 snowballs would not have damped her spirits at the moment. But however happy you are feeling, you can't talk with your mouth full of snow. And when, after considerable spluttering, she could speak again, she quite forgot in her excitement that the others, down in the dark behind her, still didn't know the good news. She simply leaned as far out of the hole as she could and yelled to the dancers, Help! Help! We're buried in the hill! Come and dig us out! The Narnians, who had not even noticed the little hole in the hillside, were of course very surprised and looked about it in several wrong directions before they found out where the voice was coming from. But when they caught sight of Jill, they all came running toward her, and as many as could scrambled up the bank, and a dozen or more hands were stretched up to help her. And Jill caught hold of them and thus got out of the hole and came slithering down the bank head first, and then picked herself up and said, Oh, do go and dig the others out. There are 3 others besides the horses, and one of them is Prince Brillian. Hey, Pepe the penguin. She was already in the middle of a crowd when she said this, for besides the dancers, all sorts of people who had been watching the dance and whom she had not seen at first came running up. Squirrels came out of the trees in showers, and so did owls. Hedgehogs came waddling as fast as their short legs would carry them. Bears and badgers followed at a slower pace. A great panther, twitching its tail in excitement, was the last to join the party. But as soon as they understood what Jill was saying, they all became active. Pick and shovel, boys, pick and shovel, off for our tools, said the dwarfs, and dashed away into the woods at top speed. Wake up some moles, they're the chaps for digging, they're quite as good as dwarfs, said a voice. What was that she said about Prince Rilian? Said another. Hush, said the panther. The poor child's crazed, and no wonder after being lost inside the hill. She doesn't know what she's saying. That's right, said an old bear. Why, she said Prince Rilian was a horse. No, she didn't, said a squirrel, very pert. Yes, she did, said another squirrel, even perter. It's quite true. Don't be silly, said Jill. She spoke like that because her teeth were now chattering with the cold. Penguin for the win. That's right. Immediately, one of the dryads flung round her a furry cloak which some dwarf had dropped when he rushed to fetch his mining tools, and an obliging fawn trotted off among the trees to a place where Jill could see firelight in the mouth of a cave to get her a hot drink. But before it came, all the dwarfs reappeared with spades and pickaxes and charged at the hillside. Then Jill heard cries of, Hi, what are you doing? Put that sword down. And now, young'un, none of that. And he's a vicious one now, isn't he? Jill hurried to the spot and didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw Eustace's face, very pale and dirty, projecting from the blackness of the hole, and Eustace's right hand brandishing a sword with which he made lunges at anyone who came near him. For of course Eustace had been having a very different time from Jill during the last few minutes. He had heard Jill cry out and seen her disappear into the unknown. Like the prince and Puddleglum, he thought that some enemies had caught her, and from down below he didn't see that the pale bluish light was moonlight. He thought the hole would lead only into some other cave lit by some ghostly phosphorescence and filled with goodness knows what evil creatures of the underworld. So that when he had persuaded Puddleglum to give him a back and drawn his sword and poked out his head, he had really been doing a very brave thing. The others would have done it first if they could, but the hole was too small for them to climb through. Eustace was a little bigger and a lot clumsier than Jill, so that when he looked out, he bumped his head against the top of the hole and brought a small avalanche of snow down on his face. And so, when he could see again, he saw a dozen figures coming at him as hard as they could run. It is not surprising that he tried to warn them off. Stop, Eustace, stop, cried Jill. They're all friends, can't you see? We've come up in Narnia. Everything's all right. Then Eustace did see and apologized to the dwarfs, and the dwarfs said not to mention it. And dozens of thick, hairy, dwarfish hands helped him out just as they had helped Jill out a few minutes before. Then Jill scrambled up the bank and put her head in at the dark opening and shouted the good news in to the prisoners. As she turned away, she heard Puddleglum mutter, Ah, poor Poll, it's been too much for her. This last bit. Turned her head, I shouldn't wonder. She's beginning to see things. Jill rejoined Eustace, and they shook one another by both hands and took in great deep breaths of the free midnight air. And a warm cloak was brought for Eustace, and hot drinks for both. While they were sipping it, the dwarfs had already got all the snow and all the sods of a large strip of the hillside round the original hole, and the pickaxes and spades were now going as merrily as the feet of fauns and dryads had been going in the dance 10 minutes before. Only 10 minutes, yet already it felt to Jill and Eustace as if all their dangers in the dark and heat and general smotheriness of the earth must have been only a dream. Out of here in the cold, with the moon and the huge stars overhead, Narnian stars are nearer than stars in our own world, and with kind, merry faces all round them, one couldn't quite believe in Underland. Before they had finished their hot drinks, a dozen or so moles, newly waked and still very sleepy and not very pleased, had arrived. But as soon as they understood what it was all about, they joined in with a will. Even the fawns made themselves useful by carting away the earth in little barrows, and the squirrels danced and leaped to and fro in great excitement, though Jill never found it exactly what they thought they were doing. The bears and owls contented themselves with giving advice and kept on asking the children if they wouldn't like to come into the cave, that was where Jill had seen the firelight, and get warm and have supper. But the children couldn't bear to go without seeing their friends set free. No one in our world can work at a job of that sort as dwarfs and talking moles work in Narnia. But then, of course, moles and dwarfs don't look on it as work. They like digging. It was therefore not really long before they had opened a great black chasm in the hillside, and out from the blackness into the moonlight, this would have been rather dreadful if one hadn't known who they were, came first the long, leggy, steeple-hatted figure of the Marshwiggle, and then leading two great horses, Rillian, the prince himself. As Puddleglum appeared, shouts broke out on every side. Why, it's a Wiggle! Why, it's old Puddleglum from the eastern marshes. Whatever have you been doing, Puddleglum? There have been search parties out for you. The Lord Trumpkin has been putting up notices. There's a reward offered. But all this died away all in one moment into dead silence as quickly as the noise dies away in a rowdy dormitory if the headmaster opens the door, for now they saw the prince. No one doubted for a moment who he was. There were plenty of beasts and dryads and dwarfs and fauns who remembered him from the days before his enchanting. There were some old ones who could just remember how his father, King Caspian, had looked when he was a young man and saw the likeness, but I think they would have known him anyway. Pale though he was from long imprisonment in the deep lands, dressed in black, dusty, disheveled, and weary, there was something in his face and air which no one could mistake. That look as that look is in the face of all true kings of Narnia, who rule by the will of Aslan and sit at Cair Paravel on the throne of Peter the High King. Instantly, every head was bared, and every knee was bent. A moment later, such cheering and shouting, such jumps and reels of joy, such handshakings and kissings and embracings of everybody by everybody else broke out that the tears came into Jill's eyes. Their quest had been worth all the pains it cost. Please it your highness, said the oldest of the dwarfs, there is some attempt at supper in the cave yonder, prepared against the ending of the snow dance. With a good will, father, said the prince, for never had any prince, knight, gentleman, or bear so good a stomach to his victuals as we four wanderers have tonight. The whole crowd began to move away through the trees toward the cave. Jill heard Puddleglum saying to those who pressed round him, No, no, my story can wait. Nothing worth talking about has happened to me. I want to hear the news. Don't try breaking it to me gently, for I'd rather have it all at once. Has the king been shipwrecked? Any forest fires? No wars on the Kellerman border? Or a few dragons, I shouldn't wonder. And all the creatures laughed aloud and said, Isn't that just like a Marshwiggle? The two children were nearly dropping with tiredness and hunger, but the warmth of the cave and the very sight of it, with the firelight dancing on the walls and dressers and cups and saucers and plates and on the smooth stone floor, just as it does in a farmhouse kitchen, revived them a little. All the same, they went fast asleep while supper was being got ready. And while they slept, Prince Rillian was talking over the whole adventure with the older and wiser beasts and dwarfs. And now they all saw what it meant. how a wicked witch, doubtless the same kind as the White Witch who had brought the great winter on Narnia long ago, had contrived the whole thing. First killing Rillian's mother and enchanting Rillian himself, and they saw how she had dug right under Narnia and was going to break out and rule it through Rillian, and how he had never dreamed that the country of which she would make him king, king in name, but really her slave, was his own country. And from the children's part of the story, they saw how she was in league and friendship with the dangerous giants of Harfang. And the lesson of it all is, Your Highness, said the oldest dwarf, that those northern witches always mean the same thing, but in every age they have a different plan for getting it. Don't get me started on marsh wiggles. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They're a funny sort, that's for sure. That was the end of that chapter. We only have one chapter left. This book is almost done. It's going so fast. I can't believe it. Almost poured kombucha on my face. Bet y'all would have liked that. Especially with my my hot mess story time last week. Why not pour a drink on my face? While I look nice. Wouldn't that be funny? New lighting. I'm just getting better lighting. I have, so you can see it in my glasses. I have this ring light, and so I've been like playing with it to get get the lighting better, because every time I'm about to go live, StreamYard is like, "Hey, didn't you know that good lighting makes you look amazing and makes your stream better?" And I'm like, I mean, okay, I guess, but I don't know. Does it really make a difference? Let's see. That's with it off. And then you see the glare of my computer more, my eyes. There, it's on. It has multiple colors. I could change it to like any color um that I want, but I don't know, the white light seems fine. Yeah, let's have some fun. Let's see. There's like a swirling multicolor one. That one's a strobe light, makes me want to have a seizure. Not really fun. Green. This one is changing from like blue to pink, blue, green, red, purple, blue, yellow, dim white, off white. So all kinds of crazy settings on this light. Yeah, there's a strobe light. Not a fan of that one. Definitely makes me feel like I'm gonna die. So white light is just fine. It's just fine. My mom got that for me for Christmas. She's like, "Oh, I know you like to make TikToks and stream on YouTube and whatever. So I got you this tripod with a light so you can make them better." I'm like, "Oh, thanks. Not gonna make my shitty content better, but hey, at least I got good lighting and a nice tripod. So there's that." Let's see. I love hummus story time. Yeah, who doesn't? That was a good time. That was great. It's hilarious that I I'm like so adamant to be on time that I like don't even care that I was like a literal hot mess and I wasn't ready to go on camera, but whatever. You get all sides of me on my channel. So whatever. Y'all can just enjoy that. More gooder. Yeah. Penguins with guns. Sounds epic. Copla, it's pretty cool. Shilajit is a resin that is sourced at high elevations of some mountains that contains 85 plus trace minerals, fulvic acid, and humic acid. It's supposed to have really good health benefits. Awesome. That's great. I was just looking up today what I need to take to make my brain work better, because sometimes I'm at work and I swear I'm just like spinning in the garden center because I'm trying to come up with a plan, and then I'll like be making the plan happen, and then I like kind of forget what I'm doing in the middle of it, or then I'm like in a project and then I start another project. It's rough. I need my brain to work better, and I need to like have better memory, recall, just like I need my brain to work better. And so um two things that were recommended was fish oil and creatine. Um yeah, I just really need to get like everything needs to improve. So I need to take like good supplements and just like eat better and continue working out. But I dropped my lid. One sec. Um, wait. Oh my God. What was that? Oh, nothing. It's fine. See, the hot mess is coming in. I mention it and then it starts happening. But anyway, yeah, if I can find something that would make my brain work better, that would be amazing. Because sometimes I'm just like, do I have a thought? Like, is there a thought in my head? Or like the memory, especially. I really want that to improve. So, if you have any recommendations for what would make my brain work better? I would appreciate that. Anyway, let's move on to our final chapter. Final chapter of this book. So sad that it's ending, but I mean, all good things have to come to an end, I guess. And you can't stay in a book forever, unfortunately. I'm reading a fantastic book in my just like for personal fun reading right now, and it's one of my favorites in this series. So I've been reading it very quickly, and I just really enjoy it. I really love good stories, especially like magic stories. You know, I want to be in a magic land with the magic creatures, and you know, I don't want to be stuck in Mundania with all these muggles. They're crazy. But you know, there is magic in our realm if you know where to look for it. So got magic here. You know, this crystal. Like the earth just grows these crystals. So that's pretty freaking awesome. Anyway, let's get on with this. Or else I'll just keep rambling forever. I know y'all love that though. Chapter 16, The Healing of Harms. When Jill woke next morning and found herself in a cave, she thought for one horrid moment that she was back in Underworld. But when she noticed that she was lying on a bed of heather with a furry mantle over her and saw a cheery fire crackling, as if newly lit, on a stone hearth, and farther off morning sunlight coming in through the cave's mouth, she remembered all the happy truth. They had had a delightful supper, all crowded into that cave, in spite of being so sleepy before it was properly over. She had a vague impression of dwarfs crowding round the fire with frying pans rather bigger than themselves, and the hissing and delicious smell of sausages and more, and more, and more sausages. And not wretched sausages half full of bread and soya bean either, but real meaty, spicy ones, fat and piping hot and burst and just the tiniest bit burnt, and great mugs of frothy chocolate and roast potatoes and roast chestnuts and baked apples with raisins stuck in where the cores had been, and then ices just to freshen you up after all the hot things. Jill sat up and looked around. Puddleglum and Eustace were lying not far away, both fast asleep. Hi, you two, shouted Jill in a loud voice. Aren't you ever going to get up? Shoo, shoo, said a sleepy voice somewhere above her. Time to be settling down. Have a good snooze. Do. Don't make a to-do. To-hoo. Why, I do believe, said Jill, glancing up at a white bundle of fluffy feathers, which was perched on top of a grandfather clock in one corner of the cave. I do believe it's Glimfeather. True, whirred the owl, lifting his head out from under his wing and opening one eye. I came up with the message for the prince at about 2. The squirrels brought us the good news. Message for the prince. He's gone. You're to follow too. Good day. And the head disappeared again. As there seemed no further hope of getting any information from the owl, Jill got up and began looking around for any chance of a wash and some breakfast. But almost at once a little fawn came trotting into the cave with a sharp click-clack of his goaty hooves on the stone floor. Are you woken up at last, daughter of Eve? He said. Perhaps you'd better wake the son of Adam. You've got to be off in a few minutes, and 2 centaurs have very kindly offered to let you ride on their backs down to Cair Paravel. He added in a lower voice, Of course, you realize it is a most special and unheard of honor to be allowed to ride a centaur. I don't know that I ever heard of one doing it before. It wouldn't do to keep them waiting. Where's the prince? Was the first question of Eustace and Puddleglum as soon as they had been waked. He's gone down to meet the king, his father, at Cair Paravel, answered the fawn, whose name was Orens. His Majesty's ship is expected in harbor at any moment. It seems that the king met Aslan. I don't know whether it was a vision or face to face before he had sailed far, and Aslan turned him back and told him he would find his long lost son awaiting him when he reached Narnia. Eustace was now up, and he and Jill set about helping Orens to get the breakfast. Puddleglum was told to stay in bed. A centaur called Cloudbirth, a famous healer, or as Orens called it, a leech, was coming to see to his burnt foot. Ah, said Puddleglum in a tone almost of contentment, he'll want to have the leg off at the knee, I shouldn't wonder. You see, if he doesn't, but he was quite glad to stay in bed. Breakfast was scrambled eggs and toast, and Eustace tackled it just as if he had not had a very large supper in the middle of the night. I say, son of Adam, said the fawn, looking at with a certain awe at Eustace's mouthfuls. There's no need to hurry quite so dreadfully as that. I don't think the centaurs have quite finished their breakfast yet. Then they must have got up very late, said Eustace. I bet it's after 10 o'clock. Oh, no, said Orens. They got here before it was light. Then they must have waited the dickens of a time for breakfast, said Eustace. No, they didn't, said Orens. They began eating the minute they awoke. Golly, said Eustace, did they eat a very big breakfast? Why, son of Adam, don't you understand? A centaur has a man's stomach and a horse stomach, and of course both want breakfast. So, first of all, he has porridge and pavenders and kidneys and bacon and omelet and cold ham and toast and marmalade and coffee and beer. And after that, he attends to the horse part of himself by grazing for an hour or so and finishing up with a hot mash, some oats, and a bag of sugar. That's why it's such a serious thing to ask a centaur to stay for the weekend. A very serious thing indeed. At that moment there was a sound of horse hoofs tapping on rock from the mouth of the cave, and the children looked up. The 2 centaurs, one with a black and one with a golden beard flowing over their magnificent bare chests, stood waiting for them, bending their heads a little so as to look into the cave. Then the children became very polite and finished their breakfast very quickly. No one thinks a centaur funny when he sees it. They're solemn, majestic people full of ancient wisdom, which they learned from the stars, not easily made either merry or angry, but their anger is terrible as a tidal wave when it comes. Unicorn hooves or dumb horse hooves? Neither. Centaur hooves. And centaurs are very smart. Don't be offending them now, Fepe. Goodbye, dear Puddleglum, said Jill, going over to Marshwiggle's bed. I'm sorry we called you a wet blanket. So am I, said Eustace. You've been the best friend in the world, and I do hope we'll meet again, said Jill. Not much chance of that, I should say, replied Puddleglum. I don't reckon I'm very likely to see my old wigwam again either. And that prince, he's a nice chap, but do you think he's very strong? Constitution ruined with living underground, I shouldn't wonder. Looks the sort that might go off any day. Puddleglum, said Jill, you're a regular old humbug. You sound as doleful as a funeral, and I believe you're perfectly happy. And you talk as if you were afraid of everything when you're really as brave as a lion. Now, speaking of funerals, began Puddleglum, but Jill, who heard the centaurs tapping with their hooves behind her, surprised him very much by flinging her arms around his thin neck and kissing his muddy-looking face, while Eustace wrung his hand. Then they both rushed away to the centaurs, and the Marshwiggle, sinking back on his bed, remarked to himself, well, I wouldn't have dreamt of her doing that, even though I am a good-looking chap. I guess horses are also centaurs. Now all makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, in the series of books that I'm reading, they have centaurs there as well, but they have a new species that is forming, and they're flying centaurs, and I love them. They're awesome because the centaurs are so smart, and they're like the female part is very lovely, and the horse part is lovely as well, but then they fly and they're excellent archers. It's just a good time for everyone. I love the centaurs. So I've always been a fan of centaurs. They're just fantastic. To ride on a centaur is, no doubt, a great honor. And except Jill and Eustace, there is probably no one alive in the world who has had it. But it is very uncomfortable, for no one who valued his life would suggest putting a saddle on a centaur. And riding bareback is no fun, especially if, like Eustace, you have never learned to ride at all. The centaurs were very polite in a grave, gracious, grown up kind of way, and as they cantered through the Narnian woods, they spoke, without turning their heads, telling the children about the properties of herbs and roots, the influences of the planets, the 9 names of Aslan, with their meanings and things of that sort. But however sore and jolted the two humans were, they would now give anything to have that journey over again, to see those glades and slopes sparkling with last night's snow, to be met by rabbits and squirrels and birds that wished you good morning, to breathe again the air of Narnia and hear the voices of the Narnian trees. Alicorns, as My Little Pony would have you believe. Yes, absolutely. Alicorns. Centaurs are out of control. We need a center for centaur control. Goodness, get out of here, Kirk. Don't make me ban you. They came down to the river, flowing bright and blue in winter sunshine, far below the last bridge, which is at the snug, red-roofed little town of Baruna, and were ferried across in a flat barge by the ferryman, or rather by the fairy Wiggle, for it is marsh wiggles who do most of the watery and fishy kinds of work in Narnia. And when they had crossed, they rode along the south bank of the river and presently came to Cair itself. And at the very moment of their arrival, they saw that same bright ship which they had seen when they first set foot in Narnia, gliding up the river like a huge bird. All the court were once more assembled on the green between the castle and the quay to welcome King Caspian home again. Rillian, who had changed his black clothes and was now dressed in a scarlet cloak over silver mail, stood close to the water's edge, bareheaded to receive his father, and the dwarf Trumpkin sat beside him in his little donkey chair. The children saw that there would be no chance of reaching the prince through all that crowd, and anyway, they now felt rather shy. So they asked the centaurs if they might go on sitting on their backs a little longer and thus see everything over the heads of the courtiers. And the centaurs said they might. A flourish of silver trumpets came over the water from the ship's deck. The sailors threw a rope. Rats, talking rats of course, and marshwiggles made it fast ashore, and the ship was warped in. Musicians hidden somewhere in the crowd began to play solemn, triumphal music, and soon the king's galleon was alongside, and the rats ran the gangway on board her. Jill expected to see the old king come down it, but there appeared to be some hitch. A lord with a pale face came ashore and knelt to the prince and to Trumpkin. The three were talking with their heads close together for a few minutes, but no one could hear what they said. The music played on, but you could feel that everyone was becoming uneasy. Then four knights, carrying something and going very slowly, appeared on the deck. When they started to come down the gangway, you could see what they were carrying. It was the old king on a bed, very pale and still. They set him down. The prince knelt beside him and embraced him. They could see King Caspian raising his hand to bless his son, and everyone cheered, but it was a half-hearted cheer, for they all felt that something was going wrong. Then suddenly the king's head fell back upon his pillows. The musicians stopped, and there was a dead silence. The prince, kneeling by the king's bed, laid down his head upon it and wept. There were whisperings and goings to and fro. Then Jill noticed that all who wore hats, bonnets, helmets, or hoods were taking them off, Eustace included. Then she heard a rustling and flapping noise up above the castle. When she looked, she saw that the great banner with the golden lion on it was being brought down to half-mast. And after that, slowly, mercilessly, with wailing strings and disconsolate blowing of horns, the music began again, this time a tune to break your heart. These books, they really have a way of pulling at my heartstrings. They both slipped off their centaurs, who took no notice of them. I wish I was at home, said Jill. Eustace nodded, saying nothing, and bit his lip. I have come, said a deep voice behind them. They turned and saw the lion himself, so bright and real and strong that everything else began at once to look pale and shadowy compared with him. And in less time than it takes to breathe, Jill forgot about the dead king of Narnia and remembered only how she had made Eustace fall over the cliff and how she had helped to muff nearly all the signs and about all the snappings and quarrelings, and she wanted to say, I'm sorry, but she could not speak. Then the lion drew them toward him with his eyes and bent down and touched their pale faces with his tongue and said, Think of that no more. I will not always be scolding. You have done the work for which I sent you into Narnia. Please, Aslan, said Jill, may we go home now? Yes, I have come to bring you home, said Aslan. Then he opened his mouth and blew, but this time they had no sense of flying through the air. Instead, It seemed that they remained still, and the wild breath of Aslan blew away the ship and the dead king and the castle and the snow and the winter sky. For all these things floated off into the air like wreaths of smoke, and suddenly they were standing in a great brightness of midsummer sunshine on smooth turf among mighty trees, and beside a fair fresh stream. Then they saw that they were once more on the mountain of Aslan, high up above and beyond the end of that world in which Narnia lies. But the strange thing was that the funeral music for King Caspian still went on, though no one could tell where it came from. They were walking beside the stream, and the lion went before them, and he became so beautiful, and the music was so despairing that Jill did not know which of them it was that filled her eyes with tears. Then Aslan stopped, and the children looked into the stream, and there on the golden gravel of the bed of the stream lay King Caspian, dead with long dead with the water flowing over him like liquid glass. His long white beard swayed in it like water weed, and all three stood and wept. Even the lion wept, great lion tears, each tear more precious than the earth would be if it was a single solid diamond. And Jill noticed that Eustace looked neither like a child crying nor like a boy crying and wanting to hide it, but like a grown up crying. At last, at least that is the nearest she could get to it. But really, as she said, people don't seem to have any particular ages on that mountain. Son of Adam, said Aslan, go into that thicket and pluck the thorn that you will find there and bring it to me. Eustace obeyed. The thorn was a foot long and sharp as a rapier. Drive it into my paw, son of Adam, said Aslan, holding up his right forepaw and spreading out the great pad toward Eustace. Must I? Said Eustace. Yes, said Aslan. Then Eustace set his teeth and drove the thorn into the lion's pad, and there came out a great drop of blood, redder than all redness that you have ever seen or imagined, and it splashed into the stream over the dead body of the king. At that same moment, the doleful music stopped, and the dead king began to be changed. His white beard turned to gray, and from gray to yellow, and got shorter and vanished altogether, and his sunken cheeks grew round and fresh, and their wrinkles were smoothed, and his eyes opened, and his eyes and lips both laughed, and suddenly he leaped up and stood before them, a very young man, or a boy. Jill couldn't say which because of people having no particular ages in Aslan's country. Even in this world, of course, it is the stupidest children who are the most childish, and the stupidest grown-ups who are the most grown-up. And he rushed to Aslan and flung his arms as far as they would go around the huge neck, and he gave Aslan the strong kisses of a king, and Aslan gave him the wild kisses of a lion. At last Caspian turned to the others. He gave a great laugh of astonished joy. Why, Eustace, he said, Eustace, so you did reach the end of the world after all. What about my second best sword that you broke on the sea serpent? Eustace made a step toward him with both hands held out, and then drew back with a startled expression. Look here, I say, he stammered. It's all very well, but didn't you? Oh, don't be such an ass, said Caspian. But, said Eustace, looking at Aslan, hasn't he died? Yes, said the lion in a very quiet voice, almost, Jill thought, as if he were laughing. He has died. Most people have, you know. Even I have. There are very few who haven't. Oh, said Caspian, I see what's bothering you. You think I'm a ghost or some nonsense. But don't you see? I would be that if I appeared in Narnia now, because I don't belong there any more. But one can't be a ghost in one's own country. I might be a ghost if I got into your world. I don't know. But I suppose it isn't yours either. Now you're here. Man, it's like it's it's just so real. Like Caspian got called home. It's just like it's I don't know. I wasn't expecting it to be like so like powerful. It just is like Aslan is he's the creator of all the realms. And Caspian went home to the creator. It's like it's very happy. It's a very good thing, but it really it really pulls on my heart. It's just so beautiful. Anyway, a great hope rose in the children's hearts, but Aslan shook his shaggy head. No, my dears, he said, when you meet me here again, you will have come to stay, but not now. You must go back to your own world for a while. Sir, said Caspian, I've always wanted to have just one glimpse of their world. Is that wrong? You cannot want wrong things any more now that you have died, my son, said Aslan, and you shall see their world for 5 minutes of their time. It will take no longer for you to set things right there. Then Aslan explained to Caspian what Jill and Eustace were going back to and all about Experiment House. He seemed to know it quite as well as they did. Daughter, said Aslan to Jill, pluck a switch off that bush. She did, and as soon as it was in her hand, it turned into a fine new riding crop. Now, sons of Adam, draw your swords, said Aslan, but use only the flat, for it is cowards and children, not warriors, against whom I send you. Are you coming with us, Aslan? Said Jill. They shall see only my back, said Aslan. Hey, I am high degree. He led them rapidly through the wood, and before they had gone many paces, the wall of Experiment House appeared before them. Then Aslan roared so that the sun shook in the sky, and 30 feet of the wall fell down before them. They looked through the gap, down into the school shrubbery, and on to the roof of the gym, all under the same dull autumn sky which they had seen before their adventures began. Aslan turned to Jill and Eustace and breathed upon them and touched their foreheads with his tongue. Then he lay down amid the gap he had made in the wall and turned his golden back to England and his lordly face toward his own lands. At the same moment, Jill saw figures whom she knew only too well running up through the laurels toward them. Most of the gang were there. Adela Pennyfather and Colmunley Major, Edith Winterblot, Spotty Sorner, Big Bannister, and the two loathsome Garrett twins. But suddenly they stopped. Their faces changed, and all the meanness, conceit, cruelty, and sneakishness almost disappeared in one single expression of terror. For they saw the wall fallen down, and a lion as large as a young elephant lying in the gap, and 3 figures in glittering clothes with weapons in their hands rushing down upon them. For the strength of Aslan in them, Jill plied her crop on the girls, and Caspian and Eustace plied the flats of their swords on the boys so well that in 2 minutes all the bullies were running like mad, crying out, murder, fascists, lions, it isn't fair. And then the head, who was, by the way, a woman, came running out to see what was happening. And when he saw the lion and the broken wall and Caspian and Jill and Eustace, whom she quite failed to recognize, she had hysterics and went back to the house and began ringing up the police with stories about a lion escaped from a circus and escaped convicts who broke down walls and carried drawn swords. In the midst of all this fuss, Jill and Eustace slipped quietly indoors and changed out of their bright clothes into ordinary things, and Caspian went back into his own world. And the wall, at Aslan's word, was made whole again. When the police arrived and found no lion, no broken wall, and no convicts, and the head behaving like a lunatic, there was an inquiry into the whole thing. And in the inquiry, all sorts of things about Experiment House came out, and about 10 people got expelled. Don't leave yet, Febby. The chapter's just about done. The book is literally almost done. We have like 2 paragraphs left. You can make it. After that, the head's friends saw that the head was no use as a head, so they got her maiden inspector to interfere with other heads. And when they found that she wasn't much good even at that, they got her into Parliament, where she lived happily ever after. Eustace buried his fine clothes secretly one night in the school grounds, but Jill smuggled hers home and wore them at a fancy dress ball next holidays. And from that day forth, things changed for the better at Experiment House, and it became quite a good school, and Eustace and Jill were always friends. But far off in Narnia, King Rilian buried his father, Caspian the Navigator, 10th of that name, and mourned for him. He himself ruled Narnia well, and the land was happy in his days, though Puddleglum, whose foot was as good as new in 3 weeks, often pointed out that bright mornings brought on wet afternoons, and that you couldn't expect good times to last. The opening into the hillside was left open, and often in hot summer days the Narnians go in there with ships and lanterns and down to the water and sail to and fro, singing on the cool, dark underground sea, telling each other stories of the cities that lie fathoms deep below. If you ever have the luck to go to Narnia yourself, do not forget to have a look at those caves. That is the end. And boy, I did not expect it to hit me like it did, but some of the interactions with Aslan, it really just hits me straight in the heart, because he's the creator. He's the creator of the realm, and that these stories are just they're very powerful, they're very real, they're very deep. Even though they're easy reads, they're very deep stories. They're very, very true tales. And wow, I really enjoyed that book. I really enjoyed it. It was so good. Um, it's so interesting reading a book as an adult that you read as a child, also reading it once you have come back to believing and loving our creator. Um, it really changes things. And yeah, that was a very powerful chapter. I I did not expect that. I didn't expect it to hit me so hard, but it's just so beautiful. Like Caspian got to go back, and he's with Aslan now, which Aslan is always with us. He's always and forever in our hearts, but yeah, there's just something about it that you know, when you get to be be right there with the creator. And it just, that was such a good book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Well, Lissy, did I much love to you? Thank you for that. These are some of my favorites. Me too. Hands down, some of my absolute favorite books. I've loved them since I was a girl. I will love them forever. I know that I will read them again. So I don't normally listen to my own streams, but wow, I really, really enjoyed that book. Absolutely one of my favorites in the series. It was so, so good. And I'm very excited for the last book. That one is The Last Battle. I honestly don't remember what happens. But I'm really looking forward to it. And I thank you all so much for being with me, being here with me on this journey as I read these books. And I appreciate it so much. So I'll give some shout outs, and then I'm going to play a song and we're going to get out of here. So thank you all so much for being here. And I'll be back next week on Wednesday, and we'll be starting our final book in the Chronicles of Narnia. Very honored to be able to do that for all of you. So, good night to Sue Finelli, Gigi Abby Lynn, Kirk, Febe the Penguin, I'm High Degree, Jenny T.I. Murphy, I think that's it. If I didn't say your name, please leave me a comment and I will shout you out. But I think that's all the people who are here. Looks like a couple people are watching, but just not commenting. That's all good. Yeah, I thank you all so much for being here. Much love, guys and gals. I'll see you all on the flat side. And we're going to end with a song. This was the very first Adventure Club song that was ever sent to me by a very, very good friend of mine.
I build myself out of these walls, they're all right to work with. I'm a dream cut of stone, one can't be, one can't fit. Some things you'll never know, but you dive anyway. Into darker shades, are you afraid you don't have to be? We could go with a story, we could fall like a star we're burning up. The fire's all we got, and we go on forever, thrown into the wave. You say that time don't matter, but you it feels that way. We go on forever, ever, ever, ever. We go on forever, ever, ever, ever. We go on forever, ever, ever. We go on forever, ever, ever. We go on. Like the setting sun, gently shining all over you, running parallel with the sea so deep and blue. Cause my heart beats so like a miles away. In a dark place, are you afraid you don't have to be? We could go, we're just strolling. We could fall like a star we're burning up. This ain't all we got. We go on forever, thrown into the way. They say that time don't matter. With you it feels that way. We go on forever, ever, and ever. We go on forever, ever, and ever. We go on forever, we go on forever, we go on.